What if your memories didn't align with the reality of your birth year? How would you explain a childhood marked by bizarre disappearances, covert government experiments, and an unwavering fight for normalcy? Henry's life was woven into a complex tapestry long before his first breath in 1967, leading to a dark and twisted journey of self-discovery. His first memories are hazy, but he knows one thing for certain. The year of his birth, 1967, can't be right. Faded photographs and vivid recollections of people, places, and events from before that date tell a different story. It's as if his life didn't begin when he drew his first breath, but was woven into a complex tapestry long before. When Henry was just a young boy, he and his mother went to live with his grandparents, seeking a chance at a normal childhood in the wake of family turmoil. At first, the change of scenery seemed like a breath of fresh air, a respite from the chaos that had engulfed their lives. However, as the weeks turned into months, Henry began to realize that his grandmother had ulterior motives for welcoming them into her home. Years prior, Henry's grandmother had suffered the tragic loss of 2 sons, a devastating blow that had left her grappling with unimaginable grief. In Henry, she saw an opportunity to resurrect the memory of her beloved boys, to mold him into a vessel for their spirits. It began with subtle manipulations, gentle suggestions that he wear their old clothes and adopt their mannerisms. Henry, eager to please and find his place in this new family dynamic, went along at first, not fully comprehending the dark plan his grandmother had set in motion. As time went on, his grandmother's demands grew more extreme, her obsession with recreating her lost sons consuming her every waking moment. No longer content with Henry simply imitating her boys, she sought to transform him completely, to erase his own identity and replace it with a patchwork of their memories and personalities. Unbeknownst to Henry, his grandmother had struck a deal with a shadowy government program known as the Phoenix Project, a clandestine operation that bore striking similarities to the infamous Montauk Project, a secret Air Force program shrouded in mystery and controversy. The Phoenix Project, however, had multiple iterations, with Henry initially becoming ensnared in the web of Phoenix II. In exchange for a substantial financial incentive, Henry's family had agreed to hand their child over to the program, seduced by the promise of wealth and the chance to have their lost sons back in some form, no matter how twisted or unnatural. With Henry's story coming to light, we expect others to soon follow, exposing yet another sinister program that has been kept hidden from the American public for decades. Henry's ordeal began in the early weeks of first grade, a time when most children were just beginning to navigate the challenges and joys of formal education. Born unusually small, he had always been the tiniest among his peers, a fact that made him the target of unwanted attention from older girls, who would fight over the chance to carry him around like a living doll. Despite his diminutive stature, Henry was an intelligent and curious child, eager to learn and make friends in this new chapter of his life. However, the innocence of childhood was about to be shattered, replaced by a waking nightmare that would forever alter the course of his existence. One fateful night, Henry's parents woke him from a deep slumber, their faces etched with a mixture of anxiety and resolve. They bundled him into the car, his sleepy eyes struggling to make sense of the sudden disruption to his routine. Groggy and confused, Henry watched the streetlights flicker past as they drove through the quiet town, the stillness of the night broken only by the hum of the engine and the occasional whispered conversation between his mother and father. Eventually, the car pulled up to a large, imposing residence that Henry recognized as belonging to his school principal. The kindly, white-haired woman greeted them at the door, her smile warm but tinged with an underlying sense of mystery. She ushered the family into her study, a dimly lit sanctuary filled with towering bookshelves and an array of strange artifacts that seemed to whisper secrets from another time. In this otherworldly setting, the principal informed Henry's parents that their son was too small to continue in first grade, her voice laced with a mix of concern and authority. She suggested that he wait a year before resuming his education, citing the potential for social and developmental challenges that could arise from his unique physical stature. As the adults talked, their voices becoming increasingly muffled and distant, Henry felt an overwhelming wave of drowsiness wash over him, his eyelids growing heavy as the room began to spin. The last thing he remembered before slipping into unconsciousness was the principal's piercing gaze, her eyes seeming to bore into his very soul, and a strange, almost otherworldly humming sound that seemed to emanate from the very walls of the study. When Henry awoke the next morning, he found himself tucked safely in his own bed, the events of the previous night feeling more like a surreal dream than a concrete memory. He rubbed the sleep from his eyes, the familiar surroundings of his bedroom offering a comforting sense of normality. However, as he went about his morning routine and prepared for another day at school, he couldn't shake the nagging feeling that something was amiss, a subtle shift in the fabric of his reality that he couldn't quite put his finger on. As Henry walked through the halls of his elementary school, the sense of unease that had been lurking in the back of his mind began to crescendo, a rising tide of confusion and disorientation that threatened to overwhelm him. The artwork that adorned the walls, once a cheerful array of finger paintings and crayon drawings, had been replaced by more sophisticated pieces, the likes of which he had never encountered before. The faces of the teachers and staff, once warm and welcoming, now seemed unfamiliar and distant, their smiles tinged with a hint of something darker, more sinister. But perhaps the most jarring change of all was the transformation that had taken place among his former classmates. As Henry approached the door to his old classroom, his heart pounding in his chest, he was greeted by a sight that defied all logic and reason. The children who had once been his peers, his friends and companions in the journey of learning, now towered over him, their faces more mature and their bodies more developed. With a sinking realization that settled like a lead weight in the pit of his stomach, Henry understood that these were not his classmates at all, but rather students several grades ahead of him, children who had somehow leapfrogged over the years that had vanished from his own life. In that moment, he knew with a certainty that defied explanation that he had lost 5 years of his existence overnight, a temporal anomaly that would forever alter the course of his destiny. This disorienting experience was only the beginning of the strangeness that would come to define Henry's young life. A few weeks into his repeated first-grade year, his mother arrived at the school unexpectedly, her face a mask of forced cheerfulness as she explained to Henry that they would be taking a special trip to visit some relatives. Eager for a break from the surreal landscape of his new educational reality, Henry went along willingly, his hand clasped tightly in his mother's as they made their way to the car. However, as the miles ticked by and the scenery outside the window grew increasingly unfamiliar, Henry began to suspect that their destination was not the warm embrace of family, but rather something far more sinister. His suspicions were confirmed when they arrived at a dark, foreboding clinical building, its facade a stark contrast to the sunny optimism of his mother's demeanor. Inside, Henry felt a chill. His mother led him down a dimly lit hallway lined with eerie, staring faces of elderly patients. At the end, a nondescript door loomed. Before Henry could process what was happening, he was pushed into the room by unseen hands, the door slamming shut behind him with a finality that made his heart race. Inside, he found himself restrained to a chair, his small body dwarfed by the cold, unyielding metal that held him in place. The room was dimly lit, the shadows seeming to dance and flicker in the corners, as if possessed by some malevolent force. What followed was a traumatizing ordeal that would forever haunt Henry's memories, a nightmare made flesh that defied all reason and humanity. One by one, his fingers and toes were subjected to a series of painful jabs, his skin repeatedly pierced by needles that drained his blood into waiting tubes. He screamed in agony, his cries echoing off the sterile walls and reverberating through the empty halls of the facility. But no one came to his aid. This horrific ritual became a regular occurrence, a twisted routine that he was forced to endure 3 to 4 times a week for years on end, until he finally reached the relative sanctuary of 4th grade. Throughout this time, Henry's mother maintained the flimsy pretense that these torturous sessions were necessary to test for dwarfism, a lie that rang hollow even to his young and trusting ears. He knew with a certainty that belied his age that there had to be more to the story, a deeper and more sinister truth lurking beneath the surface of his mother's words. As Henry grappled with the trauma, he couldn't shake the feeling that the vanished 5 years held the key to his strange new reality. Were those years spent in another dimension or timeline? Could the Mandela effect, where people remember events differently, be the result of shifting between parallel universes? Are interdimensional travel and multiple realities the key to Henry's missing time? Henry grapples with these questions daily, driving him to search for answers in an increasingly alien world. The scars on his fingers and toes remind him of the horrors he endured, but the existential uncertainty weighs heaviest. As the fog of confusion and pain lifted, Henry understood the true nature of his nightmare. The clinical building, with its eerie patients and sadistic procedures, was just a cog in the Phoenix Project, a clandestine government operation that dwarfed the Montauk Project. Delving deeper into the mysteries of his lost years and the experiments he endured, Henry wonders if he's a pawn in a larger game beyond his understanding. Are there others like him, plucked from their lives and thrust into a world of shadow and secrecy? To what end? These questions keep Henry awake at night, fueling his determination to uncover the truth. He knows the road ahead is fraught with danger and uncertainty, the forces against him powerful and entrenched, but he cannot rest until he pierces the veil of secrecy shrouding his past and uncovers the truth at the heart of his haunting journey. The Phoenix Project was a shadowy cabal of scientists, military officials, and government operatives who had taken the concept of human experimentation to new and terrifying heights. The project's ultimate goal was to pioneer a technique for transplanting the spirits or consciousness of the deceased into the bodies of the living, creating an army of perfect spies and assassins who could switch between their original selves and the personas and the experience of the dead agents at will. To achieve this end, the masterminds behind Phoenix had cast their net far and wide, seeking out vulnerable children like Henry, who could be molded and shaped into the ideal vessels for their nefarious purposes. Henry, with his unique physical stature and keen intellect, had been identified as a prime candidate, a blank slate upon which they could inscribe the twisted designs of their depraved imaginations. And so began a nightmarish chapter in Henry's young life, a descent into the darkest corners of the human psyche and the outer limits of scientific possibility. The handlers and researchers of Phoenix Project subjected him to a relentless barrage of physical, mental, and emotional torture, all in the name of breaking his will and reshaping him into the perfect tool for their sinister agenda. Beatings, near drownings, and psychological torment became the norm, a daily reality that Henry was forced to endure with no hope of respite or rescue. The scientists quickly discovered that Henry's greatest weakness was his deep and abiding love for animals, a pure and innocent affection that they exploited with ruthless efficiency. Any sign of resistance or defiance on Henry's part would be met with swift and brutal retribution, not against him directly, but against the helpless creatures he held dear. The message was clear, a twisted perversion of the carrot and the stick. Obey without question, or bear witness to the suffering and death of the only beings in the world that brought him comfort and joy. As the experiments progressed and the boundaries of morality and humanity were pushed to their breaking point, Henry began to feel himself slipping away, his sense of self eroding under the constant onslaught of pain and degradation. The bright-eyed, curious boy who had once dreamed of a future filled with wonder and possibility was slowly being replaced by a hollow shell, a living receptacle for the dark designs of his tormentors. But even in the depths of his despair, Henry clung to a small, stubborn spark of hope, a flicker of light in the overwhelming darkness that threatened to consume him. He knew with a certainty that defied all logic and reason that he would one day break free from the chains of Phoenix Project, that he would find a way to reclaim the life and identity that had been stolen from him. And so he endured day after day, month after month, year after year, his spirit battered but unbroken, his resolve tempered in the fires of unimaginable adversity. He became a master of compartmentalization, learning to tuck away the pain and trauma of his experiences behind a facade of normalcy, to present a face to the world that belied the horrors that lurked just beneath the surface. As the experiments progressed, Henry witnessed events that shattered his understanding of reality. He saw people replaced by doppelgangers, their original spirits trapped inside to guide the imposters. The program's reach seemed to extend beyond the realm of the living, with ghosts and otherworldly entities being harnessed and studied. Henry learned that Phoenix Project was just one tendril of a vast conspiracy, with roots stretching back to the infamous Philadelphia experiments. These black projects sought to master time travel, interdimensional portals, and cryptozoological creatures like the Dogman. Some Dogmen, Henry discovered, were natural beings, while others were twisted experiments transformed into lethal weapons. The deeper Henry was dragged into this shadow world, the more he came to believe that there was a malevolent force orchestrating it all. Satanic rituals and the teachings of occultists like Aleister Crowley and Anton LaVey permeated the program. The wealthy and powerful individuals behind it seemed to be working towards a new world order where the masses would be enslaved and controlled. Fearing for his life and sanity, Henry made a daring escape by enlisting in the military. He hoped that by placing himself under the protection of the armed forces, he could evade the clutches of the Phoenix program and start anew. However, fate had other plans in store for him. Unbeknownst to Henry, the military was deeply entangled with the same shadowy organizations that had tormented him in his youth. He soon found himself drawn into another secret program, one that tasked him with hunting down problem beings, cryptids, interdimensional entities, and other supernatural threats that the government deemed a risk to national security. It was during this period that Henry first encountered the Dogmen. These mysterious creatures, half human and half canine, were the subject of much speculation and fear within the program. Some were said to be malevolent, capable of unspeakable violence and destruction. Others, however, were rumored to possess a strange sort of honor and loyalty, even compassion. Henry's encounters with the Dogman would forever change his perspective on the nature of good and evil. In one particularly harrowing mission, Henry found himself cornered and outnumbered by a pack of hostile dogmen. Just as all seemed lost, another dogman emerged from the shadows, fighting off its own kind to protect Henry. This unexpected ally saved Henry's life that day, and in return, Henry risked everything to help the creature escape execution at the hands of his superiors. It was a defining moment for Henry, one that showed him that even in the midst of such darkness, there were glimmers of light. The bond he forged with that dogman would endure for years to come, with the creature making periodic appearances in Henry's life as a reminder of the complex tapestry of the universe. As his time in the military drew to a close, Henry knew he couldn't return to the life he had left behind. The secrets he carried were too dangerous, the scars too deep. With the help of his newfound ally, Henry made his way to a remote corner of the country, where he hoped to start anew. It was there that he met the love of his life, a woman whose compassion and strength matched his own. Together they built a quiet life, far from the prying eyes of the Phoenix program and the machinations of the military-industrial complex. Henry's physical body also bore the marks of his otherworldly experiences. His eyes, once a steady blue, now shifted color without warning, cycling through a kaleidoscope of hues that seemed to reflect the strange energies that flowed through him. His hair, a sun-kissed blonde in his youth, now turned jet black when cut, as if infused with the inky darkness of the void. Even more disturbingly, Henry found himself the target of numerous bizarre attempts on his life. Car crashes, freak accidents, and inexplicable illnesses plagued him and those closest to him. In one particularly tragic incident, a suspicious car crash claimed the lives of Henry's closest friends, sparing only him in a twist of fate that defied explanation. Through it all, Henry believed the truth must be told. He shared his story with a select few, hoping to build a network of allies to expose the dark underbelly of the world they inhabited. As Henry's story spreads, he knows he's not alone. Others, survivors of the Phoenix program and sinister experiments, carry the same scars and burning desire for justice. Together, they form a glimmer of hope in a darkening world. Henry's journey has been one of unimaginable pain, loss, and revelation, yet he's held onto his humanity and hope. He's a testament to the indomitable human spirit and a warning of the insidious forces lurking beyond the veil of everyday reality. His story may seem incredible, but for Henry, it's the only truth he knows. He'll continue sharing it no matter the cost, hoping others learn from his experiences and stand with him against the darkness. If you've had a similar experience or encountered the unexplainable, share your story at deadnetstudios@gmail.com. Together, we'll unravel mysteries and expose hidden truths. Like and subscribe to DeadNet Studios for the latest investigations into the strange and unusual. With DeadNet Studios, you're never alone. Your story matters. Sharing may help others find solace and support. We look forward to hearing from you. Stay curious, brave, and never stop seeking truth.
In the shadows of the digital night, we wandered far and seen sunsets, from haunting tales to eerie lights. DeadNet Studios, where fear ignites.